And I also call it critical because everything that happens to us now that you see, that's where it had its origin.
Kiara Cheatwood said there is not one thing that is happening to black people that cannot be traced directly back to that.
Precisely.
Not just you could make a link, but you can take it straight from here right back to the slave experience, including the plantation practice of separating the families, women from their children and so forth, and then bringing them back together and forcing them to cohabit with each other. I mean, what kind of lewd, perverted mind could you have that you would have a need to put a mother with her son and she didn't know her own child? He didn't know his own mother because they'd been separated. Why do you need to have these, why do you need to put these kinds of shows on for your fellow plantation owners? Why is this entertainment for you? Haven't you done enough to these people?
And that's why the Bobby Wright paradigm is so instructive for African-centered psychology, because he puts the spotlight on what is the psychology of this entity that we're confronted with here, that we must deal with this entity. We must deal with this kind of human psychology, distorted human psychology. We got to confront it.
It's demonic
So we
mind.
absolutely. So I think that was such a seminal work. I mean, it
has
because,
never been surpassed.
because we're challenged now, because it's very easy. They can lull us to sleep, with all these, these facades of humanism and all these other things that they throw at us. What Bobby used to call the red cape.
Right.
They throw all this stuff at us.
the matador.
Yeah, and that kind of thing, and we chasing that stuff, and it has nothing to do with anything.
Nothing to do with anything.
And so I think that again, that's one of the stumbling blocks to African liberation, is we must understand our enemy. And I think that there's no way around it, and we must understand our enemy in the most intellectual, rigorous fashion. This is not some emotive kind of stuff we're talking about here. We're talking about we must study this phenomena systematically, because humanity hasn't seen anything like this.
Right, and,
you see.
and don't want to see it again.
Oh, absolutely.
In the final 20 minutes of the interview, African Consciousness, True or False, Dr. Kobi Kambon reinforced his central message that everything negative African Americans have experienced, from social dysfunction to psychological confusion, can be traced back to the system of slavery and white supremacy. He explained that the trauma of over 400 years of enslavement and oppression was never healed. It was inherited, embedded within generations of African-descended people. According to Dr. Kambon, what we often call black pathology is actually the reflection of white pathology, the behavior of a people who found pleasure in terrorizing others. He reminded the audience that it was not African people who created terror as entertainment. It was white supremacists who made the lynching, burning, and destruction of black lives a family spectacle. The sickness of white supremacy, he stressed, lies not within the oppressed, but within the oppressor. Dr. Kambon went on to discuss the Dr. Bobby E. Wright paradigm, which focuses on analyzing the psychology of the oppressor. Drawing from Dr. Wright's theory of the psychopathic racial personality, Kambon encouraged African people to examine and understand the mentality of white supremacists, to ask the question, why is terrorism so natural to them? He argued that understanding the psychology of the oppressor is a vital step toward liberation, because it removes confusion about who we truly are dealing with. The struggle, he said, cannot be fought through emotion or reactionary anger, but through clarity, study, and re-education. Liberation is not about vengeance. It's about regaining our full humanity, the humanity that was stripped away and redefined through centuries of oppression.
Doctor, I thought about once, this was years ago, Bobby said, when asked, why do African American kids shoot each other? And he said, because we haven't taught them
We
to shoot.
train to kill each other, never to kill other people.
So I wanted to ask Dr. Kambon, how do we confront this issue of the increasing urban violence amongst and between African Americans?
We're going to try to deal with some of this, brainstorm on some of that this weekend.
Right.
But I think that again, the culture orientation paradigm, it instructs us that if our children are engaging in crazy behavior, it has to be because we taught them. You alluded to that earlier. It has to be that we had them at birth, and they weren't these distorted figures at birth. You see, they had all the potential to become anything in the world, and somehow between that point and 14 or 9, in some cases, years of age, we got this little wild being here. And I'm saying something happened in that interim. Now, either the parents did it, or they were naive enough to entrust that precious soul to the enemies of African people and allowed them to do it.
And we were not good custodians of our children.
Absolutely. And we have to acknowledge that and correct, so we can correct it. It's not to browbeat ourselves, because we have to build ourselves up, but we must face who we are first, so that we can see what is it we're trying to restore. What is in that regard. So I've been invited to a couple of these child development conferences, but I don't get invited back too often, because I challenge them to, first of all, hold a mirror up and let's look at what did we do.
I got you.
You see, what have
what
we
did we fail
contributed
to do?
the destruction of our own children. And as Dr. Francis Wilson told us years ago, without black children, there is no black future. You see?
Absolutely.
So that mother tells that child, if he hits you, you beat him. You know, and that you're instilling in that child self-hatred and hatred toward his fellow African
Or having a
children.
social policy that encourages a 14 or 12-year-old girl to have a child, and then she's got to go it on her own. And we expect somehow that a affirmative entity is going to result from that 15, 16 years later. And we're appalled and shocked that it's a destructive force. But what did we do? What did we do to affirm it, to create, you know, the kind of developmental space, African-centered developmental space, to create a little, you know, warrior for African people, affirmative force for our liberation.
Oh Lord, this is
and
such
nation
a
building.
big topic.
So it's challenging.
It's
It's
a
so
challenge.
challenging.
It really is.
I don't know where to go next. I got stuff here. Bobby used to say, the only contradiction is that there are no contradictions.
That's right.
Then you come along and say, to be an African in America is a contradiction. Talk about that.
Because in America is anti-African, is anti-black. They have a worldview system of socio-cultural reality that is about the destruction of black people. So to call ourselves an African in America, and we're not at war with the American cultural reality, that's a misnomer. I mean, that's a misnomer. That it has no reality. If you're an African American, you're an African in struggle, you know, with the American cultural reality.
Okay.
So you're not a part of. You're a victim of.
So you're saying African-American. If you're an African-American,
That's a
then
paradoxical state.
that's mutually exclusive. Those are mutually exclusive terms then.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right.
You're a victim.
Right.
You're a
Okay.
victim.
Okay.
So we're in America, but not of America.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, no matter how much we want to be, cultural orientation again speaks that the only way American affirms black people, they affirm them as black-skinned white people.
There you
It's
go.
the only way we
You're
affirm.
saying that's an oxymoron.
Well, of course.
That you can't be those two things
Right.
simultaneously.
Because a community assumes family, a close connection.
Yeah.
We've never been accepted in that community, no matter what we
We
try
didn't.
and do.
But we got to accept the reality.
have to accept the
country
reality
was
of that.
founded on being anti-black. I mean, that's how they conceived that, but we weren't included.
No.
So I mean, at the beginning, they were attacking the humanity of African people.
Is that a birth defect? As
Exactly.
Condoleezza said, you quoted Condoleezza.
Well, Bobby says it's as old as anything we know about him. So if it's not genetic, then it certainly operates like it is. You know, in that regard. So I don't know. You know, I doubt it. I really think we just have distinct adaptive responses. I adopt Baba Jake's idea about, you know, at the earliest stage of development, this what abnormal anxiety, this alienation,
Alienation.
this seeing
There you
yourself
go.
as different.
And
I think
seeing
and
everything
Barr and
else as
Francis is
other.
saying, yeah, see, couldn't handle being in this universe with all this color and all this other stuff and
Well, you know,
standing out, and it creates all these other kind of psychiatric
when I read The Iceman's
responses.
Inheritance, it just startled me when he said that at one, and then I found it in another literature, but that the male feared the female because he thought she was a different species because she had bore children and had a cycle. And I'm saying, you know, this is like saying your man thinks you're a goldfish. You know, I couldn't imagine what kind of mind can look at its counterpart and see it as alien, not just as different, but as alien. And the man, and then I found it in other literature. Works and Days, I think, was one of them. But there were other places where they talked about this estrangement of the male and the female because the male thought the female was something other than, you know, he didn't think she was his Eve. He didn't see himself as Adam and she as his Eve, being a part of him at all, but a part of something entirely strange and to be feared. So it goes without saying, if you can look at your female counterpart and see it as a different species, what do you think when you see something who is not only of a different gender, but who is also has a different attributes of every kind, different configuration, you know, the nose, the lips, the skin color, the hair texture, all of this stuff must scare you to death.
It's an anxiety-driven alienation that we just can't comprehend. I mean, it's difficult for African people to comprehend that.
But I think we should
because
be able
it's so
to.
polar opposite from
But
how
I think
African people.
you know why I think we should be able to? Because Africans are the oldest people on the planet, according to all the stuff. The anthropologists, they went out and dug them up and said this. Now, when Africans saw the first Europeans, they were the ones who should have been scared out of their wits because everything had been black prior to then.
But they
had never ever seen a person with that didn't have skin color, that didn't have hair with texture. They had never.
But their nature wasn't driven by fear and alienation.
That's exactly right.
Their nature was not driven by fear and alienation.
No.
Oh.
You see?
They
So
were
they had a
accepting
different
people.
adaptive response
They had
than the Caucasian. They're different That's what I'm arguing in terms of worldview differences. They're different survival thrusts, different adaptive responses.
Okay.
And I think that when we look at what kind of reality, what kind of civilization they constructed, those
You
they
call
reflect.
that a civilization?
What they call. Of course. It's their version of it.
That's
Their
a
version.
civilization.
See, I don't think we have to make them.
You gotta have civil in
See, I
there.
don't want to make them subhuman and all those things that we
I don't
do
wanna make
emotionally.
anybody
I want to
just
look
wanna
at them
know
as
if there's a
an entity
word.
that is different from us. They exist on the same human plane, but they're just different.
But wait
They're
a minute
different.
now. Civilization got the word civil in it. You can't be at war with the rest of the whole world
But it's
and
their
be
version.
civil.
But it's their version of civilization. Civil to them means dominate.
Right.
You
And
see?
constant conflict.
see?
Constant conflict.
You see?
Okay.
See, I'm just saying their dictionary is different from ours.
Well, we're going to have
and
problems.
we can't make their dictionary
we
ours.
have problems because I'm not understanding that.
Right. Okay.
But I'm going to accept that because I really don't have any time to argue with you because I'm too busy trying to find out what else you know that I want you to tell people about.
Okay.
And, you know what? One of the chapters in a book that you wrote had what I thought was an oxymoron. And the chapter's title was "The Capture and Initial Slave Marches." And what I wanted to contest is the use of capture and slave, because I think where you have capture, you got to have captives and captors. I don't like the word slave, as you can probably tell. And if you're going to say these people were captured, they didn't capture slaves. They captured free people. These people were not, they were in there, we were in Africa, on our own land, minding our own business, moving around as free human beings. When we were captured, we were captives, not slaves.
I would suspect that what I'm saying there, that is that once they were captured, their status became slaves.
No, they were still captives.
Well, I'm saying that's your choice of words versus mine. I'm saying that's what I was trying to say. Once they were captured, then their status within Eurocentric reality was slaves.
Okay, then I want you to put a footnote on that. Because in the very end, but
I understand what you're saying.
And I know you do, which is why we can have it, why I can say that to you and know that I'm not offending you. Because in the very next sentence, you said something about the captors brutalizing, sexually brutalizing the women. So I knew that you had a full, complete understanding of the fact that these are captives, these were captors. What had happened was a capture, not, not some people that went and got some slaves from a slave market. No, these were captives who were kidnapped and then put through a process which you call enslavement, and I agree. I agree with that. The process of enslavement means to transform a captive into who has a will of his own, understands that he's a captive, which is why he runs away, which is why he mutinies, which is why he resists and fights back, because he knows he's being held against his will. But the process, the seasoning process,
well, there are subtle connotations in how we use terms and that, and so on. And those things are open to interrogation.
No, but that is an enslavement process. You're quite right. That's an enslavement process. But understand that these are captives who are being enslaved, and let us not ever lose, because it gives our children this idea that we were all, we were these slaves that they brought out of Africa, and somehow some people think we're better off because, we brought out Africa as slaves, and now we've been emancipated and everything.
Or at worst, that we were savages who were uncivilized. And that America gave us the freedom of civilization. But there's a continuity in the book, because we talk about ancient Kemet, we talk about early civilization.
I'm not at odds with you. I love your work, and I'm very happy that you're here and that I will be able to see you speak uninterruptedly, because I can't stand up and ask questions every 5 minutes.
But we just have an intellectual,
we having this exchange, because it's my opportunity, and I'm so happy you're here. I'm gonna let you make the closing statements, because we got 3 minutes. I'm giving you.
I think that the solution to our problem is going to require unprecedented work toward constructing an African-centered cultural space where we can think and contemplate and interrogate, and create the kind of institutional structures that will allow us to rebuild an African world order for African people on planet Earth. I think that ultimately that's what we're aiming for. That's the corrective of our current circumstance. We must regain our place in the world. And we must protect that place for African people all over the world, starting in Africa, and all over the world. And that obviously is going to mean some kind of reorganization even in Africa, if we're going to protect ourselves. But the only way we'll do that, we must know our enemy. We must know our enemy. And a part of our scholarship must focus on dissecting or interrogating what is this enemy, what is the nature of this enemy that we're dealing with. And I think that's very critical for any African liberation movement.
So, Robert, what's the talk about tomorrow?
Well, tomorrow, obviously, Dr. Kambon is going to talk about his book and the impact his book has made on books on
more than one
black psychology.
You're going to have some books there.
And we'll have some books there to sell.
Yes.
And we'll have a question and answer period. So if you come, you'll be able to ask some more questions.
Okay, it says that you're going to discuss African American behavior in the 21st century community or violent chaos and why. I like the why part because that means you're going to explain to us the reasons.
We're going to interrogate these African-centered constructs that we've been generating in African-centered psychology and see how they apply to alter our condition.
All right. And you're going to smile all the time while you're doing it. You're doing
hey.
this real serious work, and every time I've seen your face, you've been smiling.
Well, it's an optimism. We believe in our people, we love our people, and we're going to win. As Bobby said, we're going to win.
Right,
we're going
right.
It's going to be a hard struggle. Right. But as long as we're breathing, we're going to be moving this.
Bobby always said a luta continua.
Yeah,
right. And Dr. Peace, we're African people, whether we want to admit it or not. That's the
And
reality.
on that note, I will say hotep.
When asked how black people can confront the programming that leads to self-hate, violence, and the lack of self-love, Dr. Kambon gave a sobering response. We have failed to protect our minds and the minds of our children. He explained that we have either allowed our children to be socialized by the violent anti-African environment around them, or we've handed them over to our enemies, the same institutions that historically dehumanize us, to be educated and programmed in ways that disconnect them from themselves. Dr. Kambon challenged the community to hold a mirror to itself and ask, what have we done to our children? Because he said, when we destroy our children's sense of self, we destroy our future. He called for adults to become better role models and cultural guides, to challenge the destructive messages that keep us divided and disoriented, and to begin the collective work of rewriting the African story from an African-centered lens. Dr. Kambon then addresses the contradiction embedded in the term African American. He argued that the phrase itself is an identity crisis because, as he put it, America is anti-African. To claim to be both African and American is to identify with two opposing realities, one that represents the original people of the earth and another that builds its identity through the oppression and erasure of those very people. Thus, to be an African in America means living in a society that is fundamentally against you, that rejects your essence and values. He noted that the only black people America truly embraces are those who have adopted white minds, individuals who think, behave, and define themselves through a Eurocentric worldview. In this way, white acceptance is conditional, granted only to those who no longer threaten white supremacy. In closing, Dr. Kambon made it clear that America has always been against the African, and it will always be as long as the system of white supremacy exists. True liberation, he asserted, would not come from seeking acceptance or assimilation, but from reclaiming our identity as Africans, not as African Americans, but Africans in struggle with America. The struggle begins with reprogramming the mind, redefining our culture, and reclaiming the right to define ourselves and our destiny. For Dr. Kambon, the battle for African consciousness is both a psychological and cultural war, and the victory will belong to those who choose to confront the programming, heal the generational trauma, and restore the African mind to its rightful place as the foundation for freedom, unity, and self-determination.